holds 235 men. As the closest prison to Amsterdam airport, most foreign nationals are sent here. Amongst them a handful of British men. So here we are then, Bill, in a round prison, a huge round prison.
Have you ever come across anything like this before?
I haven't.
I was quite surprised myself. They're, as for the regime, they're in the background.
Right.
They are a force.
The officers are in the background.
They're always sort of in the background. You know that they give you a bit of freedom.
Right.
And trust breeds trust, I think.
So, I mean, I see them sat at that picnic bench, whatever it is they call it.
But
Do they not walk around?
They are watching what's going on. There's no need to walk around, as you can see. There's nowhere for anyone to hide. Someone's
here?
not happy here. So what usually happens when the alarm goes off, sports stop and everyone has to go inside. So it's back in your cell.
Oh, right. Oh, right. Oh, right. Back home, Bill, if you're placed on report, it's quite a formal thing. You're removed from your unit, you're taken into a room, you're escorted in, you're actually sat down, you're put in front of the governor. But I understand here that the director or deputy director just comes up to you and says, "Hey, Bill, you've been a naughty boy." Is that the way he does it? Or?
More or less, yes.
So it's quite liberal in fridge telling, and a liberal approach. So is that the way forward, do you think, Bill?
Well, it's a more relaxed atmosphere. There's no anima. We are the prisoners, and you are the guards. They're here to do a job, and I think it helps the way the regime is run. It's a lot easier for them as well, the way it's run. Their job's made a lot easier.
The other part of Haarlem Penitentiary, the Fest, holds a further 110 prisoners, many of them awaiting trial. In the UK, more than half the prisoners on remand awaiting trial do not get prison sentences. The Dutch judiciary, on the other hand, will only remand people into prison if the punishment is likely to be a custodial sentence. Money and effort, then, are considered well spent, whether the prisoners are remanded or sentenced, and everyone here, including the prison officers, seem to be part of a relaxed prison culture.
God save the Queen, man. Hey, my boy. Take a risk. No, man.
Waar staat die kar dan?
Here we go.
12:45. Here we go again.
So who's actually going to deliver this then? Are you going to deliver it?
I'm going to deliver it personally.
You are?
Personally. I check.
So why do you deliver the food? Because back in the UK, some of my colleagues would say, hang on a minute, I'm a prison officer, not a waiter. So
Sure, I'm not a waiter as well.
so why are you delivering food then?
It's the fastest way.
Easier?
Easier and fast.
What about your relationship with them?
That's okay.
You laugh and smile and...
Yes, why not? Well, nobody gets hurt from smiling. It's
People outside might say, well, hang on a minute, they're a bunch of criminals, just lock them away. Why should
They're
you treat
human.
them like humans?
why should you treat them like animals?
Yeah. So is that what you would say?
Yeah, why not? Why treat them like animals?
Why not indeed?
In English prison, the guards, as well as the inmates, do have chip on a shoulder. They walk around, it's all big man, big man. And like, you know, there's no need for it really at the end of the day.
You've got to do your time, mate.
Everyone's got, you know,
get
just
out.
got to do your
So
time.
is the doing time the same here? Is there any difference between doing time here and
Time is
doing
time.
time at home?
Well, time is right.
Time is time at the end of the day, but you know, it's what's around it that makes it a little bit easier. Things like television.
No matter where you are, no matter what kind of luxury you have, you know, you're still banged away. You know,
prison,
and you really miss it. You know, you miss your family. You got the kids, the little things in life you used to neglect before, you know, and you sit back in your bed and think about it. You really miss it, you know. You know, I pretty much miss my daughter so much that.
Yeah, I miss my daughter as well.
So much, you know. That's.
You know, if I had the chance of going home tomorrow and doing 6 months, or staying here and doing my whole 18 months, I'll stay here, thanks for doing my 18 months.
So from what I understand, Ben, you're about the same rank as I am within the structure of the prison?
I have 14 or 15 staff. I have 57 inmates, and that's my job, to organize all the things around.
So basically it's quite similar to me, except obviously I've got slightly more prisoners.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How much?
And so, I've got about 200 prisoners and about 48, 50 staff. So I just look after that, yeah. Currently back home in the UK, overcrowding is a really big issue. Now, they've put another bed in my youngsters' cells. Would that ever happen here in Holland?
No, our government will not allow it. If the officer needs a cell, he said, well, I must pick out one. And
Pick out one to let home?
I went to send home, yeah.
You just open a cell and say, okay, buddy, it's time for you to go home.
Yeah.
Why is it so important to you that one man has one cell?
Well, it has also still something to do with privacy, with also having a normal life. If we go on the door, we don't ever open the door just normally. With our key, we knock on the door, on the lock, and then he knows someone is there, and then we open the door.
Some people say that the Dutch prisons are like hotels. What would you actually say to that criticism?
Well, come and visit us. And if you hear such a steel door is closing behind you, and then that gives a very special feeling.
Holland's reoffending rate is about the same as the UK's. Hardly a justification for the relaxed prison regime. But by offering inmates respect and a TV, everyone here benefits. The prisoners are much calmer, and the staff can enjoy a safer working environment. Who in the world needs more stress than necessary?
As lawbreakers are getting longer and longer sentences, prisons in England are getting full to near breaking point. With a record 63,500 inmates in England and Wales, prisons are having to bust around the country to find a bed for the night. Ex-inmate Jack Mahan went to prison service headquarters to see how they are tackling the daily crisis of overcrowding.
I'll offer you a few extra at Portland instead.
Jack it up for Friday. Do you want the full one?
Don't want to. The Lord forgot Lord Gillard. Just lost the Ushers business.
Every weekday in England and Wales, there are about 3,500 prisoners on the road. Some are going to and from court, but many prisoners are being transferred due to overcrowding.
Well, the rise in the prison population has been quite considerable over the last 12 months or so. I mean, there have been periods of time when population has been rising by about 1,000 prisoners a month. Obviously, that puts great pressure on the prison service.
Here at Doncaster Prison, they are expected to take prisoners from over 130 courts. They regularly receive an overcrowding draft, which means some prisoners have to be shipped out. The selection is arbitrary.
We haven't got time to mess about trying to find out all we want shut off. We just go for the first 7, yeah? There's no selection process, it's just whoever meets that criteria, yeah? These also tell us if we've got escapes on the record, if they're potentially high risk. It gives us all that information, yeah? There's no pre-selection done.
Have you ever sent prisoners off and the governor's phoned up and said, I don't want these prisoners here?
Many times.
I believe it's partly to do with media pressure. I think that magistrates who sentence prisoners on remand, because most of my prisoners on remand from magistrates' courts, are affected by the media, affected by the tabloid press. And there seems to be a move in this country towards zero tolerance on crime and zero tolerance in the courts, and they react accordingly. So people are being sentenced more and more to be held in custody whilst on remand, whereas previously they weren't.
Peter Cooper is serving his first sentence in prison for driving while disqualified. With an overcrowding draft, prisoners are lucky to have more than a couple of hours' notice before moving.
Right, Mr. Cooper. I'm unfortunate news to tell you we're on an overcrowding draft to Lewis Prison, Brighton. Be taken back to your cell shortly and then be packing your stuff and taking you down. It's because of prison service regulations to move people.
Peter is worried that his family won't have the time or money to visit him.
My wife can't get down there. I know it's a long way, like.
How long does it take your wife to visit you in this prison?
10 minutes from home.
That's so stupid, moving people straight down there. Like when people from down south anyway, why can't they be moved and let people from Doncaster stuff up here?
Date of birth, please.
4764.
And can I look at your left arm, please? Left arm, we've got dice and cards.
Once the officers have made sure they've got the right inmates, they are locked in individual cells with a sandwich and a drink to begin their long journey. I mean, I've got to say this, I don't see why they've got them locked in them little boxes. They're Category C prisoners, you know? And I just look and I just think, why? You know, why? But you could probably give them guys a train ticket and they would have got a train to the prison they're going to. These prisoners ended up at Lewes Prison near the Sussex coast. Moving inmates around like this is far from ideal, but better than paying £1,000 a night per prisoner to put them in police cells.
A man who won more than £6 million on the National Lottery has been jailed for handling stolen cars. Lee Ryan, who bought a string of expensive cars after his lottery win last March, was given an 18-month sentence at Leicester Crown Court.
As soon as you're locked away, it becomes obvious that you've got different worries, the fact that you've been locked away, and different things to contend with. You've not got the great worries of life itself, the pressures of earning a few quid, which they still try and do in jail anyway, but you've not got that great burden, the bills coming in and all that shit. And it does tend to be that the most insignificant things seem to be the most appealing. Like the sun streaking through your bars, for instance, and you know there's so many people out there in Freedom Land that are having the sun on their faces and don't actually appreciate the fact that the sun's out. And there you are incarcerated, and that little ray of sunshine actually makes you think, well, who's better off really? Because it's something that we all take for granted. Things like a butterfly landing on the prison bars, for instance. But I mean, nowadays I probably wouldn't look if a butterfly landed on the window ledge. But things that you really, you seem to take things in you. I think you're closer to yourself than you ever could be in that kind of situation, because you're stripped of most things in life that we think we all depend on, whereas in actual fact we can depend on very little.
I've always been one for the tougher regimes, really. I've always sort of dealt with myself better in a tougher regime, because the way I see it is it doesn't get any worse. And to be honest, I found that being locked up wasn't a big bother. So it didn't matter how big the cell was, how small the cell was, how luxurious it was. To be locked up is locked up to me. And therefore the regime didn't trouble me personally. I think the hardest thing to deal with was reference to the lottery on every single day of my sentence. I think was a bit much. In particular, one of the officers on my very first day at the canteen said, "Oh, here's a $6 million man then. Ryan, you've got £2.50 to spend." And I knew he found that really, really, really funny. You know, that's how warped they are. And in a way, I found it funny. So what I did was I knew that I needed tobacco out of that, I needed telephone cards, I needed this and that, and £2.50 wouldn't supply that. So I spent up to the amount of £1.25 and told him I'd save the rest till next week. Just stick that with your arse.
Each week, Prison Weekly gives a camera to inmates at different stages of their sentence. This week we see how Chris Manning is coping with freedom 11 months after doing 6 years inside. His wife Bridget stuck by him in jail, but with Chris still out of work, they're heading for troubled waters.
I received a sentence of 10 years in 1990 for conspiracy and resisting arrest, which I think was just. I did deserve the sentence. I've been out of prison for a year, and I think I'm still serving a sentence.
When he came out, I thought things would be okay. I didn't think it would be marvellous, but I didn't think they'd be too bad. But unfortunately, I was wrong.
I signed on the unemployment exchange because I couldn't get a job, thought I was entitled to some money. And I left it a week, went back, and they said, sorry, you're not entitled to any money. I said, why? And they said, because you haven't paid any stamp national insurance contributions for the last 2 years. I explained I was in prison. And they said, well, that's no fault of ours. And I asked them, well, what about the last 30 years of stamp that I've paid? And they said, that's irrelevant, that doesn't count.
Nobody tells you these things before they go into prison. Nobody. If you pay a small national insurance contribution, it helps the person in prison. But you're not informed about any of these things, which I find disgusting.
You don't owe me no more. I thought I could walk into a job when I left prison, but it wasn't like that. The job I was in has changed so much over the last 6 years that I just didn't think I could cope. Well, if they put me up against somebody that hasn't been in prison with the same skills I have, then obviously they're going to take that person. It is very difficult. I mean, I've been at the job centre and they've actually said to me, you know, the problem is that you've been in prison for the last 6 years, and there isn't that many employers that do take on next prison, especially the crime of my nature, which is quite serious. You want references? 2, right. Yeah, right, I'll get them in the post then. Right, thanks very much, bye. They want 2 references, and I can't get them from the last 6 years, so that's that buggered. Quite honestly, some of the time you're better off in prison than you are on the streets or you're in an hostel. You get 3 meals a day, you get your clothes washed, you get a bed, you get your video, you get your telly. I mean, you wouldn't get that on the out, you wouldn't get it. And you got a company, got a lot of company. All right, it's only blokes, but you can have a laugh. And I can really understand why a lot of people go back to prison, isn't it? I can understand. I can understand.
I think it's very sad, and I think you really shouldn't think like that. I think me waiting for 6 years, it's really just a waste of 6 years, isn't it? You should have enough self-respect not to even want to go back into prison.
I didn't say I wanted to go back, I said it wouldn't worry me if I went back.
Even worry you then?
Why should it worry me? I'm used to it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but you're not supposed to be used to it.
But that's what it does.
Yeah, but it's not that. It's not the ulterior motive. It's to deter people.
But it doesn't.
Never to go back.
It doesn't. It makes people less worried to go back in jail. That's what it does.
I'm going away for a while. Chris will remain in Milton Keynes. I don't know what the future holds for either of us. Myself, I hope we'll get back together.
Well, I don't think I've got any hopes for the future. I'm just taking it day by day now. I've made a bit of a cock-up and I'm just seeing what comes along. I mean, things might turn, I don't know. I really don't know.
With 26% of serious crimes committed by us young offenders, initiatives to stop young people reoffending are being urgently considered. Jack Merton came here to Dearbolt to look at why young people come back inside.
Adolescent behaviour, whether in or out of prison, is complex, and so is the job of trying to stop young criminals reoffending. The Home Secretary, Jack Straw, is soon to introduce new measures that will make parents more accountable for the crimes committed by their children. But for the young men here, those measures are too late, and the responsibility of trying to change their behaviour has been handed on to the prison service. Right, Jack Straw, what is it he said? He's the Home Secretary.
Is it?
Yeah, yeah.
What's he in charge of?
He's in charge of you, yeah. Yeah, he's the man.
It's him all stopping us getting us telly.
That was my cloud. I mean, one of the things he says is that your parents should be made responsible for your actions. What do you think of that?
Well, my mum's had 5 kids, and they've all turned out right apart from me, so it can't be my mum's fault. Do you know what I mean?
So tell me, why did you go off the rails then? Why do you think you went off the rails?
I don't know. Just wrong crowd. Got in with wrong crowd, and one thing led to another. And here I am.
How much was your drug taking part of your offending?
All of it.
Even from when you was young?
My first ever time I got caught for burglary, it was not to do with drugs. I was just messing up, no, just trying out and messing about. But then after that, I've all been through drugs.
It's never no money.
That's why you do it, money, innit?
That's why it's really hanging you, because I've never no money, man. No job. You know, when I get a job, it's not worth working for. 70 quid a week, slaving your guts out. Love to.
But look what you're doing here.
It's easy, innit, to rob someone or rob something.
Well, I think what we've got to remember, you know, is that a lot of lads that come to Dearborn, it's not the first time they've been to Dearborn. It's not the first time that they've been in prison. So, I mean, whilst it may come difficult to a number of kids, I think the vast majority of lads accept prison life fairly well, mainly because they're fairly well experienced in it.
Do you ever become, what's the word, disenchanted, or do you ever become disillusioned when you see kids returning time and time again?
Not really. I think over the years, I think you come to accept that, and I think you come to terms with that. I mean, at one time, I mean, early on in my service, perhaps it would have affected me a little bit, you know, when you see kids coming back, or men coming back. I think now it's just one of those things, and you just get on with it.
Young offenders are the group most likely to re-offend. 70% of them do. Many will become persistent adult offenders unless something can break their cycle of crime. So what is a place like Dearborn up against? Is this the first time you've been in this jail?
Oh, sixth time.
What, in this jail? What, in Dearborn?
In Dearborn.
So what do you normally get nicked for, like?
Twat, burglary, out.
I've got to ask you, do you think you'll be back?
I said it last time before that, but I'm still here.
What would you say to anyone who might be watching this who thinks them young offenders, they're just scum, just lock them up and throw the key away? What would you say to people like that?
Well, they're wrong, aren't they? We're just like them one day, but they got the bit. They got to go one way, and we went the other.
You know, you've been in and out. Do you see mates like, do you keep meeting pals?
In November '95, nearly my full town was on remand. I seen my cousin and all them were on remand then. Loads of them. There mustn't have been no people in Hartlepool. It's only a small place.
Young lads need money all the time, don't they? I know I need money all the time. And so will all these will need money all the time. So if there's no money for them, they're going to have to go burgle or something, aren't they?
What do you do for a living out there?
Me? Burgle. When I get out, I'm not burgling. I did burgle, but not no more. I don't know, I've kind of grown up a lot in the past year or so that I've been in. You know, that's all you've got to do. It's up to the individual at the end of the day. If you want to stop crime, it's up to you. If you want to stop drugs, it's up to you.
A lot of the kids that we've spoke to, not just in this establishment, in other young offender establishments as well, seem to come from broken homes, dodgy backgrounds, you know. I mean, what's your view on that?
It's very clear when you go into the credentials of the inmates that end up here that some of them have had the most appalling upbringings. And I wouldn't want to get too sentimental about that, in that, you know, so have many perfectly decent law-abiding citizens as well who never come within 1,000 miles of prisons. But there is a very marked incidence of, for example, what we might term rotten parenting, poor housing, lack of education, a culture of crime in their families that might go back to grandparents, endemic unemployment. And it's probably unrealistic to believe that a place like Dearborn, despite all the positive areas that it can touch on, can actually undo some of that years of learnt behaviour. So it's an unrealistic expectation to think that we can reform characters in that sense and turn them out good citizens when they've come in as characters who've gone through many different court processes and have ended up with a prison sentence.
Making up a bottle then. Get out the steriliser, make sure your hands are clean, you washed your hands before. Everything stays on the surface of the sterilising lid.
Here at Dearborn, staff were amazed to discover that 30% of the young men in their charge are fathers, so they set up a parenting course, which they hope will benefit 2 generations.
Flat a bit and then you're not getting pop it on and then just give it a shake. Okay. Woo!
Recently, the young offender system came in for a lot of criticism in a report by Sir David Ramsbottom, the Chief Inspector of Prisons. He criticised the system as a whole, but understood that young offender institutions do some good work. Here at Deerbolt, there are courses on offer to offenders, but not many want to know.
Chris, can I ask you how long you've been in this jail?
Been in this jail just under 12 months.
Have you been to prison before?
No, it's first time in jail, first sentence.
Why do you think a lot of guys don't take up the sort of opportunities that you've gone for, you know?
They're happy with a life of crime. There's not a lot of people in prison that aren't happy with the way that they lead their life. A lot of it's been through being young and immature and that. But when they grow up, they'll realise, and they'll probably be doing a life sentence when they do realise.
Are you frightened that you might get, you know, sucked back into that way of life?
I do think about it, yeah, because looking back, I did enjoy it. It's not a life that I regret, if you know what I mean. I do in some ways, yeah. It was enjoyable and stuff, and I am worried that I might go back that way, but I can go back that way, enjoy myself on a Friday, Saturday night with drugs, and earn an honest living through the week. So it's not going to change much in that side of it. It's just a crime that I won't be doing.
Reducing the offending rate of youngsters is a key priority for the prison service as well as society. Young offender institutions are trying to undo years of learnt behaviour, and most of these lads will return to the same circumstances they came from. Often, all a place like Deerbolt can do is lodge an idea that might one day help these young men break their cycle of crime.
This will be the last programme of the series. Everybody has their own opinion of what to do with people who break the law, but do you think that prison works?
Yeah, I do, yeah. Yes, I do, very much so. And I've been there myself. I don't think it works, really.
Difficult to say, really.
No idea, I've never been there.
Prisons are sometimes like four-class, four-star hotels, you know, so that doesn't work.
Well, what better place to learn if you want to be a criminal, you know, than prison? Surely it's like going to university if you want to do that sort of thing.
I'm sorry for all those poor dears. I cry so many tears about them, it's a bit silly. I better go in case I start weeping now.
This Christmas, BBC Two presents a classic collection of French films directed by and starring some of the most prestigious names in French cinema. The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, starring Catherine Deneuve. Claude Berry's Germinal, based on the classic novel by Zola. Le Colonel Chabert, starring Gérard Depardieu. Daniel Auteuil and Isabelle Adjani, starring La Reine Margot. French films, this Christmas on BBC Two.
Now on BBC Two, the single mother with a desire to dance her way to the top